Do you ever feel that your anxiety won't let up no matter what you try? Meditation, breathing techniques, lifestyle changes, you name it, none of them lead to lasting results. What if I told you that there's a connection between your anxiety and an inner critical voice? Here is what I'm asking you to consider. Anxiety is not just about external pressures. It's also about how we talk to ourselves, and that inner voice can get quite critical and aggressive at times. So, this is the basic premise. Your anxiety is driven by an inner critical voice, which is fueled by anger and aggression. So yes, what I'm suggesting is anxiety is linked to this inner feeling of anger and aggression. You're such a failure. You're a loser. You're lazy. You procrastinate. You never get it right. Does any of this sound familiar to you? But this inner critical voice may not always present itself in such an overt way. Take, for instance, a fellow who's gearing up to go on a date and his anxiety kicks in. It's not just about the crowded room and his fear of oxygen deprivation. No, the anxiety runs much deeper. What we slowly begin to discover is that his anxiety is fueled by a desire for this date to go perfectly. It should be flawless. The anxiety is driven by the craving for this image of perfection and the perception that the woman is looking at him as if he is the perfect date. As you can imagine, this creates quite a bit of tension. When there's excessive tension within you to meet some sort of ideal state, be it on a date, in relationships, at work, in a sport in which you participate, on the manifest level, typically all that you see is stress and anxiety. This inner critical voice may be whispering in the background, and that affects your thoughts and behaviors. But just because it's hidden does not mean it disappears. It comes out in what we call in my field, the field of psychoanalysis, in derivative form. In other words, it manifests in many different ways. This inner critical voice, this harshness, may manifest in anxiety, in somatic symptoms, upset stomach, maybe even in panic attacks. If we return to the fellow who's going on a date, what we slowly become to discover is he was actually anxious the night before the date. He was anxious about getting anxious on the date. When this anxiety was closely explored, we came to discover the narcissistic need. And this here is the link between anxiety and narcissism. The narcissistic need was to perform, and to perform at 110% and get it perfect. But why does this create such inner tension? Because in reality, unfortunately, it's really hard to get everything perfect. And when we don't get it perfect, there's a price to pay. In comes the critical voice. In come the judgments. Now, these judgments can be very subtle, or they can be quite intense. Again, in my field, something that we refer to as persecutory anxiety. This anxiety may be self-directed, as I mentioned earlier. You're such a failure. You're a loser. You're never going to get it right. Or you may be truly convinced that these judgments are coming or emanating from your environment. An example of that would be if we return to this fellow who's going on a date. Reflective questions begin to reveal that he had a feeling that this woman would see him in a particular way. How will she see me? How will she think of me? Will she know something is wrong with me? Let me know what you think. I feel like this is a really good example of how this inner critical voice leads to persecutory anxiety. Persecutory anxiety in the sense that he's so anxious that this woman is going to judge him in such a harsh way. But as you could see in this example, that inner critical voice is projected. In other words, it's not coming from him. It's coming from her. She's the one judging, not him. So the tools and techniques in this example are not for this fellow to eat something sour to snap him out of this mindset. No, the tools go much further than that. The tools that I find lead to lasting change and this is the way I work with the patients in my practice, is to help you begin to discover that these judgments, these criticisms are emanating from within. In other words, this is your voice, not the voice of your date. As you can begin to recognize that this is your own voice, then what eventually begins to happen as we work through this is the world, the dates, the friends, your colleagues, all the people in your world become less persecutory. And as you're in a world with less persecutory people, you begin to relax. In essence, this is what begins to bring down your level of anxiety. Subsequently, with this fellow, he began to feel less anxious. If you would like to hear more about this relationship between anxiety, the critical voice, and narcissism, I'm going to go into this in a little bit more detail in the next video, where I'll delve into specific tools and techniques. But in the meantime, if I said anything that confused you, please leave a comment below or feel free to reach out to me directly. We have to stop there for now. But until next time, as always, engage your mind, not your anxiety.